We're back. Joining me now, Republican Congressman from Michigan, Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers. Congressman, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me, David.
Let me ask you about these intelligence leaks, the news leaks and the investigations. You have been among the most outspoken, saying some of the national security leaks have been very damaging to the country. In light of the AP story and the seizure of those telephone records, at the time, the Attorney General defended what he did. This is what he said last month.
I have to say that this is among, if not the most serious, it is within the top 2 or 3 most serious leaks that I've ever seen. It put the American people at risk.
That was his defense for what he was doing. Now they're talking about changing the guidelines. They're trying to offer an olive branch to the press. Are you concerned that the Attorney General has folded on this?
Well, listen, as a former FBI agent, as certainly as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, keeping classified information secret is incredibly important for our national security. However, I think that dragnet that they threw out over those AP reporters was more than an overreach. And it's not very good investigative work. Matter of fact, you normally want to target, you narrow that list down, and then you might be able to go for someone's phone records or emails. But that dragnet approach, I argue, is a little bit dangerous when you talk about First Amendment protections for a free press. And same with the co-conspirator issue. That just defied logic to me, and it almost seemed like someone wanted to get around the notion that they had the shield protection law. If you look at the law and you look at what they did, it would have been exempted from that. So there's, I think, a lot of questions that need to be answered there. But at the same time, we do need to remember that these leaks are serious, and for those folks who are leaking information that may lead to the death of sources or people who are cooperating with the United States or men and women who are serving in combat, there should be consequences for that.
Do you think that the Attorney General leveled with Congress, with the Judiciary Committee, with your colleagues when he said that he was never involved in the potential prosecution of a journalist, given that he named as a co-conspirator a journalist in the affidavit?
Certainly the timing is, I think, problematic for the Attorney General, and I think that has to be thoroughly investigated. I think you need to lay out exactly what the testimony was, exactly the timeline when he signed and checked off that they should move forward with going after naming him as a co-conspirator, and then find out what reconcile that with his testimony. I think all of that needs to be done. But this pattern of deception administration-wide is starting to become concerning. You know, when you look at the IRS and you look at the Benghazi issue and you look at the AP issue, I think the trouble here isn't even the individual specific scandals. It's this broader notion that there's a pattern of this activity. I think that's what concerns people, because what you don't want to have happen is Americans lose faith and trust in their institutions. That, I think, is what's at risk here, and we better get this back in the box so Americans can rest easy at night knowing we're working for them and not against them.
Bottom line, do you think the Attorney General should keep his job? Should he resign?
Yeah, I think that's going to be up to him. I think how he handles this moving forward is critically important. I've argued from the beginning they just need to lay it out on the table. Americans are more forgiving if you tell the truth up front. This notion that you're going to leak some things out and hold some things back, and this has been administration-wide on these issues, I think has been damaging to them. It's certainly damaging to the public trust. So, again, I think it's going to be up to him. There should be a thorough investigation. Those facts should go where they go, and including if that takes it back beyond the Attorney General, to make that determination. One of the things that we've got to do here is restore that faith and that trust. That only happens when the truth comes out and people who have gone beyond the pale of the law are held accountable.
Let me ask you more broadly about national security. We're talking about it in the context of leaking that kind of information. The President talking recently about the state of the war on terror and how that should be rethought as we move forward, both in his administration for future presidents. He, in his speech recently, declared an end to the war. Susan Rice, who appeared on this program in September, said al-Qaeda was decimated. We know that there was a trove of information that was recovered when Osama bin Laden was killed from that compound. Not all of that information has been released. You've had a chance to review some of it. Do you agree with the assessment that the administration has made about the strength or lack of al-Qaeda?
I think it is. We are in a wrong direction here if we think we can pull back and let this thing go. You have over 500 schools have been closed in Afghanistan, majority of girls' schools. Last week, the Taliban poisoned 74 girls trying to go to school. The Boko Haram in northern Africa area have killed some 3,000 people. These are Islamic extremists. That's revamping up. We have the problem in Mali. You have the problem in Algiers. You have the problem in Libya. All of these with al-Qaeda extremists. In May of this year, 1,000 people were killed in extremist violence in Iraq. You have 90,000 plus people killed in Syria over what is a growing sectarian problem, which is now becoming a regional problem. Saying that this thing is over and that we can all just rest easy and start to change the policy to try to address this, I think is dangerous to our national security, and I don't think it fits the facts on the ground. Whatever our politics are, Republican or Democrat, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter when you're talking about national security.
Do you want to see more of those documents released?
We're going over the documents again. I think the first week of June, my committee is going over and having folks up again for a review of the documents. And we should take a look at what can be released and what should be released. I think there is some value in some of that information retaining its classifications for national security reasons. I don't think it's the majority of it, and I think we ought to seriously give consideration to allowing more than the 17 documents that were selectively picked by the administration to be made public. I think that doesn't probably tell the whole story.
A couple of quick ones. Jim Comey now is going to be announced, a former Bush administration official for director of the FBI. You were once up for that job. People pushing for you. What do you think of it?
Listen, I think it was a very safe, logical choice for them. He has a good reputation for his prosecutorial work in New York, and I think that's good. You know, I was fortunate enough to have the working men and women of the FBI who were advocating for that selection, and I'm humbled by that experience. The Bureau is going to be a very key player moving forward. Well, we've already seen that extremism and violent jihad has approached the shores of the United States in ways we haven't seen before. That means that the FBI is front and center of that fight. And we've got some problems to work through. This notion of an intelligence-based investigation versus a criminal-based investigation, and what that means in the confines of the law. Getting this right will really mean the difference between life and death for Americans. And that challenge, I think, has to be met here in the months ahead.
Case in point, this Florida shooting of the apparent friend of Tsarnaev, the Boston bomber who was killed by authorities, shot by the FBI. Should there be an investigation under the circumstances here, as it turned out that he was unarmed after he was shot and there was a talk of a scuffle there? Are you concerned about this?
Oh, absolutely. Every shooting is investigated and should be investigated, and we should get to the bottom of it. You know, I always, there used to be a saying when I was in the FBI, it's to be better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. You ask these individuals to go into these meetings, and some of these folks are violent. And it's their job to come home at night as well as to enforce the law. And if they're going to make an error, I hope they do it for their families. Now, that does not give them the excuse to go beyond the bounds of the law. So that's what that investigation should determine. We need to make sure that it was all done according to the law. But again, Monday morning quarterbacking, if someone appears to be violent, knowing that this individual has violent extremist ties, I think that that agent has to make a decision in an absolute fraction of a second. And we all should consider that also in the course of that investigation.
All right, Chairman Rogers, we're going to leave it there. More to discuss, but we're out of time this morning. Thank you, as always.
Hey, thanks.